Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon. A very interesting episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. First and foremost, there's the whole situation with Cole. Natalie calls him in about a dude whose daughter Anna was kind of left out in the desert and all these people were chasing after her. I immediately kind of thought like the worst thing because it's like the cartel's involved and stuff like this. I thought that was a thought. That's kind of what was kind of being thrown around potentially, or maybe it was other coyotes. But I was like, oh, don't tell me he was smuggling drugs over and that's what Anna's been carrying around the entire time. Turns out not to be the case. It's a whole other thing. But let me just kind of break it down. Cole showing up in time to help Anna, and sadly, he ends up getting shot and he's wounded, and they're trying to survive. Obviously, it's actually interesting because he ends up making his way to like a cabin or whatever, and lo and behold, what's inside a magazine with one of his mom's pictures in it. Because the entire time, like, Maya had already asked him about his mom. It's something he doesn't really ever talk about, and we kind of understand a little bit more of why. We get more context, because obviously he moved around a lot with his mom. We kind of saw that already, that side of things, but this time it's kind of like him developing photos for her and stuff like that, because he said I never had a conventional upbringing, and then I guess that's part of the reason why he was talking about it. But I was like, because I thought like, oh, she's all taking these pictures in war zones and stuff like that. I thought that's what he meant, and he's helping her, God, what's the word I'm thinking of? Develop, that's the word I'm trying to think of, develop the pictures and stuff like that. But we later on when he gets older, he decides to essentially enlist in the military and stuff like that. He's going to like a military school in particular, and his mom doesn't want it. She's like, you can do whatever you want to, you can rebel in any shape or form, but the fact of the matter is, don't do that. I guess for his mom, is she's very like, because she knows going into the military, you kind of lose your free will to a certain extent, and being like, the fact is, it's all about following orders, and she doesn't know, because I think it's also because as someone who's photographed a lot of war zones, she doesn't want her son to be kind of in that same plane. It doesn't want him to be on any side of a war zone like that potentially, and because she's seen how firsthand what those war zones can be like. But for him, it's like, this is what I want to do. I want to be like you, to just going to battlefield to battlefield, war zone to war zone, just taking pictures. And she's like, you think that's all I do? And it is kind of sucky that he did kind of say it like that, because it undermines what those photos represent. Like, she's taking photos that, later on Cole talks about it, but his mom was all about the truth and everything, and that's what she was trying to convey with these pictures, convey this emotion, understanding that, like, with this one shot, it can say more than just words can. It has more of an impact than words can. But for her, it's like, I want to, do my part making the world better. And he's like, I want to do the same thing. So that's why he did that. But sadly, during the war zone, taking the photos that she did, she ends up dying like 4 years later. And that's the thing. Like, obviously, they didn't end off on the best of terms, but I don't know. The fact is, Cole had such regret about everything. I think him and his mom never fully recovered. Like, they always had such a strong bond when he was little, but the older he got, I guess on some level he kind of started maybe resenting her lifestyle and everything like that. Well, once again, it's like every time he got comfortable somewhere, he always had to up and leave. So maybe on some level he just kind of started to resent his mom a little bit for that. And so it's kind of like, for him, I think the military brought something in his life that he maybe felt like he didn't really have, and that was stability, because he was always moving around and stuff like that. But the immediate thought that like Cole ends up having later on, the fact of the matter is, he even talks about it with Natalie being like, I don't think my mom would be proud of who I am. But she, he wonders about that. Now it's like, she would be, but he's like, after everything I've done, especially like what he did with the CIA, definitely she'd probably frown upon a lot of that stuff, because he's like, I'm not even so sure she would be proud of me after everything that I've done, because he did the one thing she asked him not to do, didn't want him to do. And not only did he do it, he went even deeper and further into a situation where it's like the CIA is all about following orders. And he did a lot of stuff that he looks back on and is like, I wish I didn't do, so that was just kind of like a sad element to that, because I was curious why it was that he didn't really ever talk about his mom, and now we kind of understand why. I mean, he did have that sweet moment with Maya at the end of the episode where he's showing, like, it's a museum, and there's his mom's pictures are up there, and explaining to Maya, like, is like, what do you see? And she looks into pictures, and I think, hearing her talk about it and describe it, I think, and probably looking at her, he probably sees his mom. And so she's also wanting to, get a camera of her own. So maybe she might follow in the same footsteps. I'm sure Cole would probably have his reservations. But the fact is, she just wants a camera for now, so I'm sure that's just fine. So, I guess it'd also be kind of like a small part of his mom lives on through Maya in some shape or form. So a lot of other interesting things went down in this episode in that regard. Luckily, I didn't even talk about the resolution of it. It was kind of interesting because it turns out Border Patrol, like this whole thing, like I said, I thought it was like, oh, maybe they sell drugs from the cartel. I was like, is that why you didn't go with the Coyotes, but you got someone else? Because like you got the lady to pick them up because that way no one would, she just looks like a innocent young American girl, so no one would have checked. But it's like, in the long run, it's like they were trying to drop off some stuff to the LA Tribune. It was proof of Border Patrol corruption. And because it was interesting, because the moment he was like, don't trust cops, I'm like, why would you not? Well, I was like, well, considering the fact is government and cops are kind of corrupt, in Mexico, I was like, I figured that might have been the reason. And it kind of is. It was more so like the Border Patrol were corrupt. That's why they were coming after him, because they knew that he had that information. So I also love that whole Wade situation of like Anna gets there and then, you have Roger being like, I'm tired of people lying to me all today, which I'll get to that later on. But the fact is he punches Wade and I'm like, because he's like 6'5", looking about 250 pounds. No way you're a reporter. And then he's like, here's my ID. And it's like, Wade, why didn't you say anything, buddy? It's just like, oh, man. See what happens. I mean, I guess for him, he was thinking like, no. You're with the Border Patrol people, you're a bad guy. But it's like, no, you punched an innocent dude for nothing. So I love that. Because I love, like, Roger's whole situation in this episode got started because Cynthia is going to be doing background checks on everybody and doing some investigating. And Roger's like, wait, what? Like, obviously everyone looked like, well, why are you getting so worried? Because it's like Roger is Mr. Play by the books and very by the rules. So it's like, what did you do that you're so worried about? But then Rihanna and RJ started getting a little nervous too. And then, like, and then Cynthia's like, I'll tell you all about the investigation and stuff like that. And Roger's like, I just might have to get me a lawyer. Ha 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 ha. But looking really nervous about it. And I love that. We learned a lot of interesting things, like finding out apparently Trish was married before. And for her, it's like she never told Roger because it's like, hey, I wanted, this perfect marriage to be the first. Like, obviously, like, everyone has their past. It's something Roger ends up bringing up later on. But the fact of the matter is, she had hidden this from him for so long. I'm sure she just, it was kind of like a whim type of moment of just kind of like, hey, she was in love back then. She was young. He was in a band. She followed, it was just a whole thing. It's young love. It didn't mean anything. So sadly, Rihanna overheard it. Then we also found about the dirt that Cynthia pulled up from them. The fact is, Rihanna's got a second Instagram where she's uploaded photos of underage drinking. So it's like, oh yeah, cut that back. And then also RJ got indecent exposure charge or whatever, and it's like, what the hell? What? And it's just kind of like he couldn't get to a bathroom or something like that. So that's okay. And then, Rihanna kind of throws it back at Trish about the whole fact is that you were married before. Then Roger's there, and he's just like, I don't even know you anymore. And stuff like that. But then he also has Louisa run Barry's file later on. I was like, oh, who's this guy you're looking into? And he was like, it's none of your business. I was like, what's this all about? And it's like, oh, lo and behold, it's about Barry. I was like, that was interesting. I didn't know what that whole thing was going to be about. I also love that whole conversation, that the reason why Roger was nervous about the investigation, because it's like him and Avery stole some cheese. It's like some illegal cheese, I guess, to have here in the U.S. They stole it, I guess, from an investigation or something. And it's like, I was going to go bad anyway, so we stole it. It's like, oh, man, it was so good. Do you still have any left? And, Roger's like, nah, I had to throw mine away, We both did, right? Avery's like, yeah, sure. I was like, no, he didn't. Later on, it turns out, no, he didn't. I figured as much the way Avery was acting on KG like that. I'm sure for him, he was probably trying to see if Roger had some more, too. So it's like, oh, he can, my stockpile's probably running a little low. Maybe I can borrow something. Yeah, I totally got rid of mine too, Roger. I also love later on when they saved the day that Avery's screaming like, the fact is, why am I always the last one to know everything? The fact is, I still had to come out here and save your ass. Roger's like, do you know what he's saying? And Bailey's like, I don't know. It is interesting, though. It's actually interesting because this episode kind of deals all with that. It deals with trust. Because for Roger, it's like, I don't want you keeping any secrets from me, Trish, no matter what it is. Because the fact of the matter is, he already has to deal with Cole at work. His partner at work has trust issues. That's why Cole went by himself with the whole Anna situation and didn't rely on, hey, it's like, yo, I would have backed you up. But I think it just stems from a lot. I mean, I think it also stems from him so used to handling things on his own. Now, I mean, for one, it's also he doesn't want to get people caught up in compromising positions. So a lot of times he'd handle stuff just because he's looking out for Roger. But other times, maybe it's just because he doesn't know Roger as well as he think he would. But the fact is that he, you know, maybe he was just trying to protect Roger, didn't want to put Roger in a compromising position. I want to think that, not rather than think like, oh, he just didn't know if he could trust Roger with a situation like that. I think it's definitely more the former than the latter. I also love that when Roger and Bailey are showing up, and it's like, oh, there's like a tall, handsome African American man. Is that him? And then Cole was like, handsome? Nah, that can't be Roger. Luckily for Roger, he never heard that comment, because that definitely would have been interesting to hear what he had to say about Cole after hearing that. I also love that we got a little bit of like Bailey and Roger, because I feel like in retrospect now, you look back on it, it does seem like Roger doesn't always kind of trigger her as kind of like an equal, I guess, because he's kind of a little teasing, and just the way I guess it's almost like he treats her the way, I mean, granted, he doesn't treat anyone the way he treats Scorsese, but and Bailey kind of got tired of it because she's like, why am I just not your equal? Like, maybe, hey, when I was a rookie, that was fine and dandy, but now where I'm at, my position and stuff like that, the fact of the matter is, you kind of lord over me and stuff like that. He's like, well, I'm your mentor and everything, but for him, it's like, when it comes down to it, if it seems like I'm treating you like that, it's because you're part of the family. The fact of the matter is, that's how, you know, people don't always like it, but that's how I treat family, you know, so welcome to be part of the family. And I was like, oh, that's super sweet, you know? So that was kind of a neat little thing between them. But getting back to Roger and the whole Trish situation, I really like that when it came down to it, like, Roger didn't actually look in the file because it's not important. He's like, I'm gonna imagine who to do this. Oh, he's a butcher, he's this, and that. And, you know, Trish is happy because it's like, hey, you know, don't worry about him. What matters is, you might have had to pass once again. You might have had to pass, but the fact is that we're happy, we're in love, and we're together, and that's all that matters. Prepares to burn the file. At first, I was like, don't. Is it going to be some twist where he's like, oh, I'm trying to burn it symbolically? But the fact is, I shouldn't do that. But I was like, no, I'm sure it was copies and stuff like that. But then lo and behold, it starts burning, and then he reads the file. He's like, did that say Olympic? Olympia? And she's like, Roger? No. Remember, he's a butcher, remember? And it's like, dude. Because then it would have turned into the whole situation. Roger being who he is, it would have been a competition like, oh, you were with the Olympian. I mean, to be fair, who's to say he was an Olympian back then? Maybe he is. Maybe that's more modern. Maybe that's from before. I'm probably assuming that might be from before. No, it might be after. It might be like, well, he was in a band then. I mean, who's the hell to say he wasn't in a band and also an Olympian? So I'm interested to see is there anything else that's going to end up coming up about this whole thing now that Trish is running for DA and stuff like that. Probably not. This is probably like, oh, we'll probably get to that extent, but I'm curious to see if anything else will happen though. But I do like that in the end, you know, everything kind of has a happy ending in that regard. Like, obviously, like, you know, Maya and her dad, I mean, like I said, Maya, Anna and her dad came out of this okay, and they also got asylum here in the U.S. Major props to Cole. Still got the bullet wound and everything, literally still suffering from it, jumps on top of a car to stop the bad guys from getting away with her, Anna's dad. So, and he's like, yeah, Natalie, might have a few more wounds for you to kind of check out. So it's also interesting too, just kind of a little side note, that there was no like awkwardness necessarily between Natalie and Cole, because I think he's in a, like, it didn't make a big point, but I think it's representative of the fact is that he's moving on and she's moved on, and so I think because there was no moment like, because usually he's a little different around her, but I think enough time has passed that like, hey, everything's kind of moving in the direction they need to be, like they're going down their separate paths, but we're always going to be important to one another, especially with Maya in our lives. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, it's just me, you know, pulling from what we saw there. Maybe next episode or whatever, we might see something else kind of arise. But for now, like I said, it just seems like everything's kind of like, oh, neat composure. It's interesting because I guess at some point, like, Cole must have told... I'm curious, like, how much did Natalie know about Cole's mom? Like, she knew it was the photos, but it's like... Because the first time they met, he was pretending to be like a photojournalist, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, because he was, you know, because that was a world he did know because his mom was one. But I'm curious how like, did Natalie know a little bit? Did she know just as much as Maya, or did she actually know a lot? Did Cole talk? I mean, because I'm sure, like, he didn't talk about her a lot with Natalie either, you know, but maybe because Maya's around that same age he was, you know, moving all around with his mom, that maybe that made it even harder to want to talk about her. I don't know. It was just kind of a very interesting aspect to it. I'm curious if we're going to dive any deeper in that. That might be it. Because I'm actually surprised we got another episode about his mom. I would have expected to kind of... But I think we needed to kind of learn more about, you know, Cole getting to where he is and just his relationship with his mom, you know? But I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. Because, once again, you know, just because of what I heard a while back, episode 13, that was supposed to be, like, potentially the cutoff mark for certain things. I'm really not going to go into it. If you don't know, you don't know. So I'm curious to see, like, where it's going, because I assumed it was going to supposed to be like a 13 episode season. That's what I was always talking about, because I thought that was the case. Apparently not. So I don't know how many episodes are going to be in this season. I'm assuming, since we're keep going, it might be shorter than season 2. It might be the same length, because season 2 was like 20 some episodes. I think it was like 22, but season 1 was only 18. So we'll see in the long run. I'm not going to look it up ahead of time. We'll go by episode, just so I'm surprised and don't get spoiled by anything by accident, you know. So like I said, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.